The following is a Podcast One Minnesota production.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, you betcha, yeah.
If it's made in Minnesota, who's making it and how?
Yeah, you got that right.
It's the makers of Minnesota, focusing on the products and services uniquely made in Minnesota, and conversations with the makers, entrepreneurs, and innovators in Minnesota about how they conceived of their products and how they brought them to market. With Stephanie Hansen, it's the makers of Minnesota.
Hi, this is Stephanie Hansen, and you're listening to The Makers of Minnesota. This is podcast number 40. Wow, 40 is awesome. Thank you for everyone that has listened to the podcast. I appreciate the Twitter messages I got over the weekend. Hey, listening to this podcast, it's so great. Thank you. I really appreciate it. If you do like the podcast and you can give it a rating, that helps it be seen by more people. So if you're listening, if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be awesome. You can always find us on any of your favorite podcast channels, Podcast One, obviously. Also, you can find us on My Talk 1071, which is my weekend job, and they have all the podcasts that the My Talk hosts do there. So thank you for listening. In addition, we do have a Facebook page, Makers of MN. We have a Twitter account, and we have an Instagram account. So if you see something that you like or feel like we need to know about a maker, please feel free to give us a referral. My guest today is a referral, actually, from a friend of mine named Sarah Collins, who produces the Stone Arch Festival of the Arts. And she said, hey, have you ever interviewed Adam Turman? He is the guy that does the murals in town. I'm like, of course I know who that is. He's done such beautiful work. And here you are today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure.
Well, no, it's a pleasure for me, so I appreciate it. Thanks for asking.
So artists, and take this the right way, artists can either be like really gregarious and outspoken,
or super socially awkward
and introverted and terrified of talking. So totally. I can already tell you're the former.
Right.
You're not going to be shy.
Right. I'm cool. You know, I
love that.
I'll talk to you.
Does anybody, when I talk to you, and this might be a blessing or a curse, but I think of you as like the Minnesota artist.
Well, thank you.
Does that feel like something that mimics who you think you are?
I think. How do I go about that? I've been told that that's how people feel about me before, and people tell me that often, and I love that. I love the fact that you know, I am what they consider to be their Minnesota artist. What's interesting for me is that I view myself as, well, there's many other artists who I think are just amazing, and they do a lot of Minnesota-centric work as well.
Sure.
And so sometimes I just have a hard time considering myself to be that guy, I guess. But I don't know. There's so many other great artists in Minnesota, so I don't really like to take all the credit. But when people want to give it to me, I guess I'll absorb that. I'll be a sponge for that in that moment.
So you are, I would describe you as a muralist, as an illustrator. Is graphic design appropriate as well?
Yeah, you got it. You nailed it. I mean, really what I am, and I used to call myself this is like, when I would get introduced somewhere, I'd say that I'm an illustrator. But now I'm really starting to consider myself to be more of an artist. For me, that's really hard because I'm trained as a graphic designer.
Sure.
So I always attack every project that I get in sort of a graphic design, mentality. I need someone to give me direction to do what I do.
Yep.
I really like limitations. I really like to have a reason to make the art that I make.
Yep.
So to back up, to answer your question like a second time, I'm an illustrator, aka artist, muralist, and I'm also a printmaker. So I screen print as well.
So let's talk about when you got your first commission. Do you remember it?
Okay. I guess we're going back way far.
Well,
if you want to.
So were you an artist in high school?
Yeah.
And then did you go to school? Did you get a fine arts degree and do that graphic design?
So really it started for me in middle school. And middle school was when, and this is a story I've told whenever I do a presentation or something. It's just kind of like my founding story, and that's what I consider to be sort of the
Let's
catalyst.
Hear your founding story.
Right. So, in ninth grade, there was like a contest, and the kids got to submit their work to have their work put onto a T-shirt that the kids would then wear, for the next year at school.
Okay.
So this thing. So I won the little contest thing about like this, and the theme was Hollywood, so I drew these really crude pictures of, R2-D2 and Charlie Chaplin and Marilyn Monroe and stuff like that. So I won the T-shirt design, but the thing for me that was the coolest was that the next year, seeing these kids actually wear my design on a shirt and multiple kids wearing it, like half the school was wearing the shirts. It just felt so cool.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And so that was my like, what's the word?
Impetus.
Sure.
For getting going.
Yes. And so that's been really fun. That part was just so cool. And then, I think that's one reason why I like to be a printmaker. I like to make more than just one thing because I like to be able to share the work as many times as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Even when I'm jumping ahead here and kind of, all over the place, but even with my prints, I keep a lot of my prints open edition, which means that they're signed and then they're dated, but they're not necessarily numbered. So I can continue to sell them. I can just reprint them and sell them.
Right.
In theory, when it comes to like a printer, the value is really in like the numbering system. But I kind of, I'm okay with selling more than just one batch of prints. As long as I think that they're good and other people will like them, I'm going to continue to sell more and more of that. So the multiple thing, I really love that.
So when you graduated from high school, where did you go to college?
When I graduated from high school, after that I went to the University of Minnesota. I got into MCAD and I got into CVA. Oh, poor CVA. College of Visual Arts.
I know, it's sad. They were in St. Paul.
Right. So the thing about MCAD was I just felt that it was just really, for me at the time, it was really expensive.
It is expensive, yeah.
And I got a scholarship on merit, and I was able to go there. But even with that, I was sort of forward thinking in the fact that how am I going to pay back all these student loans? How am I going to make a career as an artist? And I was trying to even think about this even at like 18, 19 years old.
You were. That's impressive.
Well, to a certain extent. There was also some parental influence too, as to like, this is how much money we're going to give you to go to school. The rest you got to figure it out. Yep.
But you knew then that you wanted to make money with your art.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like I guess a skill, a passion, something that was coming from within you.
That's how I still am. I like when we even just first started talking, I was like, I need to have a reason to make what I make. And so I'm always thinking about this I kind of coined this little term for myself called hangability.
Yep.
What that means is, at least what it means to me, I'm making up the name, word, is that my biggest, what makes me the most proud and the most happy is when people like the work so much that they buy the work, they take it home with them, they frame it, which oftentimes costs more than the artwork, and then they hang it in their house. And for me in my house, when we put up artwork in our house, we do not take it down. It just stays there. It's been there. We don't really move it. We look at it every day, and it's something that's in our lives, and that's that. If the hangability part comes in with, if someone purchases something and they like it so much, it's going to stay with them for years and years and years and become part of their life. Like that makes me cry because like that's so special to me. So anyway, that's.
I can tell you, I was just at. We were talking about our mutual friend, and I was at her house a couple weekends ago. She had a dinner party, and I looked, and she had your hot dish girl, who's kind of a famous, iconic image.
Right. Yeah.
She had that hanging in her kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
That print is in a lot of kitchens.
Right.
When you did that, did you know it would be as iconic as it has become for Minnesota?
I guess I wasn't really forward thinking that much about that particular image. I thought it would be fun and cute.
Yep.
We made it and when I say we, it's me. I just always say we.
That's fine.
Just trying to make myself seem a little bit bigger, and
like you've got minions.
I just had this whole army like Warhol of just building all my stuff for me. But no, it's me, and my assistant. But Hot Dish, it started as, what did it start as? I think it started as a print, and then we turned it into an apron, and then I actually just handed you a set of playing cards that have Hot Dish on them now. And then because that particular piece ended up doing so well in the beginning, as a print in an apron, for example, I made the You Betcha print, and I made the Oofta print, and just trying to have some fun with, our culture, here in Minnesota, and like what that means, and just poking a little bit of fun at it. I think that's just something I like to do in some of my work.
So when you're out on your own now, you finished college,
mm-hmm.
and you were making all of your money, I think, doing your own commissions and doing your own work. People weren't hiring you at that point to do work, were they?
So the story goes that I graduated from college from the University of Minnesota. We never really finished that, did I? I kind of went all over.
It's all right, I'm here.
Yeah,
Keep you on track.
Yeah, it's not linear here at all here in this in number 40. So I graduated from the University of Minnesota with a degree in design communication, which they now call graphic design, thankfully. A little bit more easy to understand. Right out of school, I was hired as an intern as an interactive graphic designer. That is really, interactive graphic design is really not my forte. I really wanted a job. And there was a job readily available, a paid internship, which is super cool. And I was doing that kind of work. And I was at that job, at that interactive design job for a few months, and then I went to another job for another few months, and then I was at another graphic design agency for a year and got laid off. So I jumped around a lot in my first few years. And what I realized was what got me some of those jobs out of school was the fact that I had illustration in my book.
Yep.
And when I was moving around to these jobs, I noticed that what was now in my portfolio was just a lot of stock photography, and it was just sort of like any designer in theory could do this work, and it doesn't make me special anymore. Then flash forward, I was working at the year job I was talking about that I got laid off at. That was Larson Design and Interactive.
Okay. And
I was hired there as an interactive graphic designer, but I ended up doing some work over there, and a woman that I've always just I've always really liked her, and she was a VP at the company, and she and I are still friends. She saw me drawing a storyboard for a commercial that Larson was doing at the time, and she said, "Why? You can draw. Why are you not an illustrator?" And I'm like, "I don't know, because the money's in graphic design, interactive graphic design or something." And she said, "You might want to try doing some illustration work." And I'm like, that was just kind of a kick in the pants to, I don't have as many illos in my book. Let's kind of work on this and see where I can take the illustration from there on out. Got laid off from Larson. This is all back in the .com bust, and 9/11 happened and all this stuff. And then I was laid off for a few months, and then I got a job working at the University of Minnesota, and as an in-house graphic designer, and I worked there for 12 years. But during that time, I met up with a poster collective called Squad 19, and it was just a really good excuse to start drawing again. And I met a guy named Dave Witt. He does all the zombie pub crawl stuff. If you know that
I do.
Guy. Dave has just been a good friend and a real inspiration to me as far as just draw, just get out there and make some stuff. And then at my day job, we also the College of Continuing Education at the University of Minnesota. That's where I worked in that department. Through the University of Minnesota, or through College of Continuing Education, Radio K is broadcast out of that college. So I had the opportunity to do basically free work through Radio K-sponsored shows around town. So a lot of the work that you would see up in the clubs back in 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 were, work that I was all just doing for free, a lot of it through Radio K. And so
I feel did you work on the logo?
Radio K's logo?
Yeah.
I worked on a couple iterations of it, yes.
Because as I think back now...
Not the original, which in my opinion is the best one. That's in the 93 one is the one that I knew, but I got the opportunity to redo them.
Yeah, I can recall some shirts that I think perhaps you may have done now that I think about it.
So there's one with a broken bass on it, bass guitar.
It's just in my mind.
That's the same bass that's being smashed on the cover of the Clash's album.
All right.
Yeah, so that's and so I found a picture of that, and I was like, I'm going to put that on Radio K because I'm all into rock and roll and punk rock, and that's the kind of music.
Did you do music posters?
Yeah, I did a lot of gig poster work, and so we would do with the collective of Squad 19, and then also working with Radio K, I would do work that would be hung up. Basically, it's like a lot of flyer work and also screen printed posters that people would basically steal out of the clubs. Those would hang in First Avenue, Triple Rock, Turf Club,
And you were how old at this time?
What was I? Between 24, 25, and
so you're getting
30.
free tickets to shows. Your artwork is being hung up and stolen, which is like the ultimate. And were you feeling pretty cool right about then?
It was a little bit rock starry.
Sure.
It was kind of fun because with the gig poster work, you also have to get permission to make the gig posters. Sometimes you could get permission from the band to actually sell the work at the show. So you got to meet the band and you got to go behind the merch table and sell some of the work. Since then, I've kind of got another opinion about that because the bands are making their money off of merchandise at the show. And here I am selling my work right next to them, even with their permission. But I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to let them take their money because that's the reason why I'm here. So anyway, I've kind of stopped doing that. But even just in that moment, in that kind of lifestyle, it was fun.
Who was the coolest person you met?
As a band?
Yeah. That you were just like geeking out.
Well, it's like I said, I listen to like a lot of punk rock and like dirty punk rock and just stuff like that. I don't know. One of my favorite posters that I ever got to do is a poster for the band called The Queers.
Okay.
So I got to meet Joe Queer. That was fun.
I think I know a little bit about punk rock, and I don't know about the Queers. The Queers, so you got me there.
The Queer, they're just a lot of fun. Actually, I just recently went out to a show in Chicago to go see another favorite band of mine, Screeching Weasel, and Masked Intruder.
Yeah, these are not bands I know. Yeah. So you're in a unique little club there.
Yeah, I'd have fun. But also, what's really cool is like I got to do some work with the Excel Energy Center. And so the Excel would commission me as doing a gig posters as thank you gifts for the bigger bands that came into town.
Let's talk about that because when a big show comes into town, the Excel, Joya, and those folks will put together a gift pack of Minnesota things. Right. And so you were a part of that. That's pretty neat.
That started back, Dora would have to tell me. Actually, I started with a woman named Kathy O'Connor, and that was back in 2008 or 9. That was a while ago. So the first band I ever got to do a thank you gig poster for, big band, was AC/DC.
That's pretty neat.
That was kick-ass. And they've kind of changed the program a little bit about how, like, what you get in return for doing a gig poster. But I've been able to do work for Elton John and Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen, James Taylor.
How long, if you're going to get a gig poster like that, how long does it take you to put that together?
Depends on schedule. I mean, it just depends on, what else is going on. Right now, I'm actually doing one. My favorite band ever is Iron Maiden.
Okay.
And Iron Maiden's coming to town in June.
That's going to be some cool art.
So that one, I'm just doing it, and that's all there is to it. And I'm going to do it, and then I'm bringing as many people as I can get tickets for, and we're going to go and have a good time. And I'm even bringing one of my daughters too, who's she's into it. She wants to go just to hang out and have a good time. But to answer your question about timing, I mean, I like to book out at least a couple of months in advance, just because the schedule is so recently for me the schedule's just been so hectic to just. I get asked to do a lot of work, and I like to say yes, and it's hard to turn certain work down. But also the kind of work that I'm doing now is a little bit more involved. I mean, it's not necessarily just doing like a gig poster, for example, that's got like a hard deadline. You just gotta get it done. Work I'm doing now is a little bit more campaign driven, or we're getting ready for shows that are coming up. So I'm trying to schedule a little bit more. Like it's kind of like how a clothing line might be getting ready for their spring collection, a year and a half in advance, something like that.
And you're going out, you're going to maker shows, and you're selling your prints and your shirts. And
right.
Where is the most money for you these days? Is it in selling your own items at shows like that, or is it in the commissions?
The last year was a really good year, and last year it was the mural work.
And let's talk about that. How did that get started? Was The Butcher and the Boar the first mural you did?
So how much time do we have?
Yeah, keep going. It's fascinating.
Yeah, the way that the mural work really started, well, the long story is, I work with a guy. Okay, so I work with this guy named Chank Diesel.
Yes.
Chank does
fonts.
Correct.
He's amazing.
And I
need to interview him too.
He's a good guy.
Yeah.
And Chank's awesome. And I've known Chank for years and years and years and years, but I've just sort of peripherally known him, and just as a designer. Anyway, got to know him a little bit better over the last in like 2009, 2010, and I asked him. I basically just cold called, emailed him, and I was like, I want to put the font together for my gig posters because I'm realizing that I have so much typography I have to draw by hand, and I would love it if you would make a font that has what we call contextual alternates in it, which basically means that like when you type it out, it kind of looks like more like handwriting.
Yep.
So like if you put two O's together, they look different, or two N's, they look different.
Okay.
So anyway, he can program that for me. So I drew everything, and then this is a really long way to tell this story.
Okay.
Anyway, so Chank basically had a wall at Creative Lighting, and he was like, let's paint it. And I was like, cool, let's do it. And so he got all the paint, got the scaffolding. I had a free weekend, which is very rare for me. My wife took off to go back, home with her folks and the kids. So I was like, I'm on, let's do this. So I basically painted a wall on the side of Creative Lighting. Flash forward, I meet an artist that I've known and loved for a long time, and that's Josh, the artist, Josh Lemke, and now he's Josh the brewer. He's a brewer at Surly now, but Josh and I really wanted to work together. So I'd also known Omar at Surly back from 2007, where I cold called him for beer, but that's a whole other story. And and he went for it. But anyway, so Josh and I basically pitched Omar to paint a mural on top of his old tap room in Brooklyn Center.
Uh-huh.
Then Omar actually went for it. We painted this thing, and then
Did he pay you in beer?
Sort of.
Okay.
It was
just curious.
And honestly, it was a pro bono job. He, Omar was kind enough to give us a little, it's kind of, but it was one of those things where I just really wanted to learn a little bit more aerosol work, and I wanted to learn from Josh, who I just think is kind of next level work, like how to do that. But I'm a brush and roller guy. All right, where in the hell was I? So
that was your first mural. The Creative Lighting.
Creative Lighting, and then it went to Surly's Tap Room, which is now covered. You can't see it. That's a whole other story. And then the owner for Butcher and the Boar went in to meet Omar at his Brooklyn Center location. And rest in peace, Tim Rooney from Butcher and the Boar.
He was a great guy.
So, yeah. Can't talk about it. So, anyway, I love Tim. So, Tim went into Surly to ask them about getting beer into what would be his new restaurant. And then Tim noticed the mural that was up on top of the tap room, who did that. And then Omar gave Tim my name, and then I get to do a painting on the side of Butcher and the Boar.
I work in the building right next to that, so I look at that every single day.
And hopefully you like it.
I think it's amazing.
Thank you. And what's great about that mural is really the location. I mean, the location is right on a major bus line through downtown Minneapolis. Yeah. It's right there in front of you. You see it. It's brightly colored. We had a lot of fun with it. We did have to get city council approval, and we also had to get approval through Lunds, because those were it was a historical district, hence the city council. And then Lunds also had to approve it because they're looking at it all day long. And so anyway, it's just that has really been, again, it's kind of like when I did that T-shirt in 9th grade. It's like that's the catalyst for a lot of the other mural jobs that I get, is because it all happens. It's really all about your network. And also the Butcher and the Boar one, they were also kind enough to let me put my URL up on there too, so people can find me pretty easily, and we can do some work together.
In your existing life as it is today, you have a couple of kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're working. Are there mediums that you haven't conquered yet, or things that you've talked about an evolution about how your work has changed, the mediums have changed.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that you're like, I'd really like to do something like that?
That is a really great question, and I think a question I really have not thought about a whole lot. I mean,
you've been busy. You just finished that crow mural that you did.
Oh, the Radisson Red. That was really fun, too.
That is a really beautiful piece.
Thank you.
And I worked, I had a building on the West River Road, and every year the crows come.
Yeah.
The murder of crows come. Right. It's the weirdest, craziest thing that
happens. But you have to be deep local to know that phenomenon.
And that's what when I saw that mural, I knew right away what that was.
Cool.
I knew, like, did you live there? Had you worked there? How did you know? Because for a while, we just thought, I mean, we were like, we would be the only ones who would know, but we videotaped. It was just our employees would be like, oh God, every year. It was about a 5-day period of time.
Right.
Do you live over there, or how did you know about the murder of crows that happens over in Northeast along the river?
A couple of things. From my old day job working at the University of Minnesota, and I live in St. Louis Park, I had to travel all the way across town, which if you work in one location and go to the other location all the way across town, you know that commute sucks.
Yep.
Right? So anyway, I would always enter the highway from 394 in downtown Minneapolis, 394 to 100 to get back to St. Louis Park. And always entering on 394, during a certain time in the fall, you could see all these crazy crows. And I just remember being in awe. Like, this is so awesome. And then go to meet with the people over at Carlson along with Art Force. And then the main client at Carlson is like, and who owns the Radisson Red?
Yep.
That's where I'm going with this. He's like, you know what I think would be really cool for this new millennial hotel that we're doing is crows. And I was like, okay. And then he starts describing what we are talking about right now with the crow phenomenon. And I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I know all about that. Like that, I love that. And also I would always see the crows flying around the basilica. Yep. So it just like looks super gothic. And it also is happening in the fall when the sunsets are coming in.
Yeah.
Oh my God, with that orange and blue light.
Yep.
And then the crows, and then you're hoping that your car doesn't get completely pooped on, and it's just awesome. Like it's so.
I had a few.
It's so metal.
What I love about that is you just described that you said like you need context. So someone gave you the context, and you were able to work it out through that.
Let's rock it.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Give me something to throw a dart at, so I can aim it, so it doesn't just hit you in the eyeball. It needs, you know what I mean? Like I need to like hit some sort of a target. And that's how I do my process, too. I mean, I don't do a whole lot of sketches. It's basically one sketch, and then we get revisions based on that sketch. But before it's just that single sketch, I want to have a discussion with the client and know, like, what are they thinking? What are they, you know?
Have you ever, like, been sitting with a client, and you get your plan going, and you're bringing your sketch in, and they hate it?
Not, I guess hate is a strong word, but
where they
not
were just
feeling
like,
it.
This is not.
Yeah.
And then what do you do? Do you revise it?
It depends.
Have you walked away from anything where you haven't really kind of come to an agreement and just like, hey, this isn't going to work for me? Because you're an artist. It's not like you can just manufacture crap.
Yeah, but I'm trained as a graphic designer. So I'm always thinking about, like, if you're going to spend X amount of dollars on something, it's your project. I mean, like, I want to make this for you. You need to be happy with it. If you're not, and also I have a contract and I have a down payment, and in the contract it's pretty, straightforward as to like what you're gonna get from me. And there's a lot of open communication. Just today, literally an hour before I started my bike ride to come over here, I'm working with a brewery in Canada, and we're doing these new labels for this kind of like special can design that they have. I'm an example guy, so I always have to give examples of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's fine.
So there's this kind of graphic, there's this infographic that's on the side of this label. And I thought we were all final. Send all the final files out. I'm ready to go. I'm like, how do you want me to invoice you? We're done. And then he gets back to me. And by the way, I love this client, so I can talk about this. Sure. And Matt, my client, he would laugh. But so I basically second guessed what I had. It's like he contacted me and he was like, I think we've got a couple of changes that we want to make to this final thing. Sorry, but don't hate me, but I think we're going to change some stuff. And I was like, okay, and then I got into it, and then I realized that what the changes that he was wanting to make, and even how I was hesitant to make them at first, I believe we're going to get a better product out of the end, as an end result.
Yeah.
And I really try to think about it that way. I've listened to another podcast where the host used to be a designer, and when he would get feedback like that, it would just make him, he'd just get so pissed, and he'd get so upset.
Seth?
No, this is
okay.
This is a guy.
There's a guy.
Do you want me to name the podcast?
Yeah.
All right, it's called Adventures in Design. It's a guy named Mark Brickey, and love Mark, and I love his philosophy on a lot of the stuff that he does, and he's just a character in and of himself. But anyway, so he said that when he gets a client feedback that he's just like, that sounds like shit, I don't want to do that. Then what he does is he basically says, I need to get off the phone with you, if he's on the phone, or if he gets an email, he's just like, I have to go and do something different for a half an hour. I can't do this right now.
Yep.
And that's such a good philosophy. It's just like,
take a breath.
Take a breath. Count to 10.
In life, that's a good philosophy.
It really is. And like, even when I'm talking about like art and design and stuff, I really feel like what I do for a living is just kind of how I try to live my life. But just take a break. Try and see it from another person's perspective. Just try. Just give it a shot. And oftentimes it's worked out really well for me. Have I ever had to move away from a project? That was your initial question. I'm not recalling anything right now.
Let's talk about
Which is good.
Let's talk about your tattoos a minute.
Okay.
So we're talking to muralist. Is that muralist, illustrator, graphic designer Adam Turman? So you have very colorful, highly designed, beautiful tattoos on your arms. You have 2 sleeves. Did you design them and then someone made them for you, or how is that having someone else's art on your body? It's a weird question, but I'm very curious about the answer.
Yeah. I didn't start getting tattoos until I was about almost 30 years old. So I was like, I'm never going to get tattoos when I was younger. I was like, no. I always thought they were just a really bad idea. And here I am. I got my, half my back is tattooed too. I work with a shop called Uptown Tattoo.
Sure.
So they're on Lindale Ave, and a lot of my work is done with a guy named Nick Scrady over there. And really, what the philosophy that I came up with, or that I try to do, and I've also heard from the guys who work on me, is think of an idea and then think about it for what you consider to be a long time. That could be a month, that could be 6 months, it could be a year. Think about it. Is that something, now do you still like it after a year or whatever time you give yourself? And I'm, in most cases, yes, for me. I started with my kids' birthdays. So I've got my oldest daughter, Ada's birthday over here. And then my youngest daughter, I just have to say her birthday because it's so cool. It's 6606, which is like,
that is cool.
So cool. And Iron Maiden being my favorite band. So, hello. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, so I started with those tattoos, and then it just kind of got addictive, and I just kind of kept going. And then I started designing work that would go on my body that are things that I think that I've always loved as a kid. So on my back, I have a big eagle, and I remember when I was 5 and I went to kindergarten, I had this kick-ass satin jacket with an embroidered eagle on the back. Oh, I wish I had it in my size right now because it's so cool. But I tattooed the eagle on my back, basically a variation of. So what I do when I go to the shop, and I would suggest this for anybody going to get a tattoo, would be just like you do in a design project, or for me, like an illustration project. Give your artist as much info as you possibly can. Give them direction. Give them examples. I have people ask me for, can you design a tattoo for me? And I said, I'm kind of out of that right now because I don't want to charge you and then you're going to go to your artist and charge them. You want your artist to be fired up about what they're going to do. So I draw I kind of take like a, not a rough idea, but a pretty darn good idea of like what I'm thinking and where I think placement could be. And then I basically take it to them and I just say, all right, this is what I'm thinking. Go for it.
So you're the client.
I'm the client.
Yep.
And it's also like, I'm not a very good client, because I feel like I'm the worst client. And I have clients that I work with who are just, I don't know how they do it, but they're spectacular. Like they just do such a good job. They're like really decisive. They know exactly what they're thinking in their head. They know I'm going to do my like Turman thing to it or whatever, but they just end up being so, I don't know how.
They have an idea in their mind.
I'm just a little poopy pants when it comes to being a good client. I can't do it.
What does a mural like just average in cost from a range of like the low end to the high end? And I'm sure it's based on size and conditions and everything else, but
that's a loaded question. And also just like pricing art is a really loaded question. That's a tough one. Because it's really in like value, like what a client deems as being valuable. Breakdown for mural for me is, I'm not going to give you exact numbers, but it's basically there's a sketch fee, there's a square footage fee. The square footage fee also depends on if it's an easy to paint on surface.
Yep.
Remember, I'm brush and rollers, so I'm not doing aerosol. So I'm not going to do like corrugated metal or something like that because it's just too hard to paint on that. Versus like cinder block or brick, which is a textured surface, and or it has like conduit all over it, or it's just a mess. And then there's a supply and equipment fee too.
Okay.
So I use, right now I'm using primarily Benjamin Moore Aura paint, which is like really, really good, commercial grade, house paint, basically. Interior or exterior, the reason I use it comes in quartz, and you can get it in any color that you want to, and you have that pre-mixed. Whenever I attack a wall, I always think of it as like I do a grid work system. So like I make like a 1 inch equals 1 foot or like 18-inch grid.
Yeah, I thought I
do a grid system. I don't do the projector thing because that can distort the overall image. And when I draw, and we'll get into that in a minute, but when I draw to proportion of what the actual wall is. So I measure the wall and I make sure that everything is going to be exact. So when I'm sending out sketches to clients and they're looking at it, a lot of clients, they've never done this before, and this is scary, and this is a big deal, and they want it to look like it's going to look. So I always try to make my sketches look exactly like they're going to actually look on the final wall. So I try to, my process, I try to get the wall, get up basically in a way that's really accurate, and then it's basically paint by number. You just select the colors. I already select the colors ahead of time, and I work digitally. Primarily drawing, and then I select all those colors, and then I send that to my paint guys, and then I also send it to myself and my client so that we all have the paint list. So if anything happens, we can just reorder paint. The client also gets to keep the leftover paint just in case there's any dings that they might need to touch it up.
When you do a mural,
right.
Like the maybe we'll use one that you do a mural. Let's say you do the crow. Do they then own that art, or do you own that art that's on the side of their building? How does that work?
Well, in my mind, they own that work. It's not really being removed, though.
But like, if you wanted to make a shirt with that same art, or a playing card, or something like that,
right?
Would that be their art or your art, or
that's part of the contract?
Okay, and I would assume you own everything.
So. There's a weird gray area in that, and that's part of what contracts are for. So, in theory, if you are commissioned to do a piece of artwork, the person who is commissioning you owns that artwork, which is kind of weird.
A little bit, because you have such a stylized way of doing something.
But I made it, it's mine, and why is that yours? And so what I do is I have an illustration rate, then I also have a buyout rate. So you can choose to buy it out if you want to. Most clients, may not have a budget to be able to buy it out, and that's fine. There's other clients like, Radisson Red, they did buy it out, and then also like Children's Hospital, for example. I've done some work with those guys. They just want to own it because they want to make sure that nobody else is ever going to get that art. The fact is that I feel like I'm a pretty ethical guy, so I'm not going to go and I'm not going to sell that art to any other client anyway. I have a really hard time with not customizing every single thing that I do. When it comes to something that I did for myself and somebody wants to purchase and, have some sort of usage for that artwork, I'm happy to do that. But, I'm also happy to customize something even from like its initial state. So with Radisson Red, for example, I did the mural, and I did a sketch, And what I worked off of was basically like a revised kind of finalized sketch, not like final art, like vendor ready art for like to be printed on like a poster or like a T-shirt or whatever, but a sketch. And then with the contract came another clause, another line item, basically another cost to take that sketched art and then make it into a final vector ready art that they could actually take and then use on whatever they wanted to.
Yeah, you're so smart. How did was it trial and error to figure out how, because these are a lot of complicated questions that
nobody teaches us this stuff.
No, they don't.
And every artist does it differently.
And that's why you're an entrepreneur.
I actually on one of your last podcasts, you were talking about the entrepreneurial part of it. I'm trying to get better at that. That's not what I went to school for. That's not how my brain thinks. My brain wants to make pretty things for people to solve their problems. That's what I want to communicate. I want to solve a communication problem. That's the graphic designer in me. So when it comes to like business and being able to figure that out, I'm really relying on other people that I know and just asking a lot of questions.
But that's a really smart entrepreneurial thing to do.
Right.
One of the reasons why I was not a good entrepreneur, in my business partner, there were 3 of us, and my other 2 partners were much smarter than me. And I was always like covert about information, like I didn't want to tell people things. And I was like, oh, if we tell them, that's our secret sauce. And one of my partners said, there is no secret sauce. Everybody's thought of it before you. And if you don't ask questions and have a network of people that you trust and you talk to, and they're not going to give you information unless you share some of yours, right. He was like, you are going to constantly be making useless mistakes.
Completely. I could not agree with that more. And so in 2016, my goal in 2016, and I kind of got busy, so I didn't really totally complete my goal, but my goal was to meet other artists doing what I'm doing and doing it successfully. So I'm trying. Have
you been traveling some?
To meet other artists?
Yeah.
Or, not really traveling. It's really more local Minnesota. Okay. So, one of the artists that I was able to meet, it just kind of on a whim, it was crazy, was Michael Bierauer.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't interviewed him, you should. He's a good guy.
I haven't interviewed him, and I have a number of his pictures in my office, actually.
Right. He's all over the place, too. But Michael his story is really interesting, and I've just really enjoyed meeting him. The other thing too is like we're basically doing very similar stuff.
Yes.
Let's be honest here. But I don't view him, and I'm going to speak for him, I guess, but I don't think he views me as being competition either.
I would say no.
We have a different enough style that it's not, we're not like fighting for the same jobs or anything.
Right.
But it's just really interesting how open he is about just talking about work. Like,
and his merchandising, he's done a good job of it. Right,
and like shit happens on particular projects. What happened? What could I do so like that? Like, what can I learn from your mistakes and vice versa? Like I'm happy to tell people. There's another artist recently who he's doing some mural work and he wants to know how to price it, and he actually found some blogs and some like kind of general pricing guidelines, and he fired that off to me, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, and thankfully, like, I was right in that range of like of the range that he was talking about. But, he was asking me a question about how do you get the work up there? What kind of materials do you use? Like, what's going on? And, I really don't have a big problem talking about, basically trying to raise everybody up.
And I think it does. The idea that you could put work that you've done and the caliber that you've done on the side of a building does raise everybody up. And that's the world you want to live in, where I think, I'm speaking for myself, but, none of us are doing something that's so uniquely ourselves. We're all a part of a community and a group of people that are meant to help each other, right? We're not meant to be solitary creatures. We're meant to communicate and commune and partner and be with others.
What I've always thought is that how cool would it be if we could all just charge the same amount of money and it really wasn't based on, what the budget is for a certain client. It was really based more on style. Like, we all have different style. A lot of also when I was doing the poster collective thing, the Squad 19 thing I was talking about, we all worked together. I mean, and it was a lot of it was pro bono. We really weren't getting paid for this, so it was like no skin off our, no big deal.
Yep.
But but we all had a different style. So how can we? It's just. I just find that might be an interesting way to do it if we weren't also scared to talk about money all the time. But here I am kind of keeping stuff back too.
No,
but,
it's okay. I get it. Have you talked to the chalkboard guy? There's a local guy that's doing a bunch of chalkboard
Is that
work.
Jeff Nelson?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Chalkboard murals.
Yeah, and his work is amazing if we're talking about Jeff Nelson. And but there's tons of other artists who are doing work like that as well. And
how about the guy at Butcher and Boar, the penny floor, and then there's the guy that is at Free House, that there's the penny portrait.
Mm-hmm.
That's all cool murals.
So cool
too, when you think about it.
There's tons of great work around town. I mean, Minneapolis has such a cool scene, and that's why I'm trying to tap into different artists doing really cool stuff. And just like, what is their story? Like, where are they? In their career.
Yeah.
And then how far are they pushing it? I'm trying to push like kind of a new merchandise line now. I'm trying to get out and from doing just the prints, because I know that everybody only has so much wall space. You only have like the hot dish in your kitchen, and you might have some windows in there and a refrigerator. You don't have a whole lot of room. So like, what? Maybe wearing art, or having a pint glass that has art on it, or basically art is a lifestyle. And I think that there's some other companies around town who are doing a really good job of doing that type of work too. So I'm trying to get more into what's next. Like where can I start applying my work to, and just different outlets.
I love that idea. Adam Turman, you've been a real pleasure to talk to. It's been super fun.
Thank you. Thank you
for spending time with me, and I will look forward to seeing you at my next Makers Festival. What's your next event coming up? Do you know?
It's our garage art sale.
When is that?
Okay, so that's June 10th.
Okay.
It's early, so get there early. It's 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's going to be at Steel Toe Brewery in St. Louis.
I was going to say, is it really at your house?
No, well, we used to do it at the house, and it kind of got out of control.
Yeah, I can imagine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.